I always say there's 5 different types of leverage in business and in life. I did a lot of research studying, talking to people. Tony Robbins has a good rendition of this. There's so many out there, but I really kind of took all the thought leaders in our spaces and kind of created what I believe is like one of the most valuable 30,000 foot views of leverage. And it's time leverage, business leverage, personal leverage, financial leverage, and relationship leverage. And I speak more to that when it comes to my coaching program, but I really do think that you should have leverage in all 5 of those categories. And the formula obviously is to figure out the who, is kind of based on what we just talked about. So yeah, I think leverage is so important. And even if you are working at a 9 to 5 and you're transitioning into being an entrepreneur, or have no plans to transition into an entrepreneur and you have a 9 to 5, leverage is still so important. And I work with a lot of individuals who, whether they be lawyers or not working for themselves in some capacity, who are paid by somebody else to some degree, and they come home and they miss out time with their kids, their families, their dogs, whatever it is that they might want to do, being outside, for instance, because they don't understand this concept at a higher level.
Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Law Podcast. Thank you so much for checking us out once again. Jason Muth here with Pride Away Stays and Straightforward Short-Term Rentals. Our real estate attorney and broker Rory Gill is here with us as well. Rory, we're going to be speaking with an amazing coach and consultant, and she's going to tell us all about how real estate leaders should leverage the ability to think smarter about their businesses with all the changes that we're seeing, especially with these NAR lawsuit settlements that are coming out. We all need help with this, don't we?
And I mean, you're looking at it, we all know the traditional way to make money as a real estate agent and a real estate broker, but there's so many more opportunities in the industry. If you can think creatively, leverage your resources in creative ways. And right now is a very good time for it, as the industry is in flux in the way that the whole real estate brokerage concept works, especially on the buyer side. There's so many opportunities if you're willing to kind of think about it, be creative, and find other ways to make a career in real estate.
Yeah. Let's welcome our special guest all the way from Boise, Idaho. It's Alexis Rankin-Halikas. Alexis, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you guys both so much for having me.
Alexis is a coach and consultant with Rankin Enterprises, and she's also affiliated with KW, Keller Williams, in Boise. What a beautiful city. I've never been there. I've just seen so many pictures.
It's wonderful. You've got to come visit.
Are you born and raised there?
No, actually born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Ah, okay. You know, a lot of people migrated from California to Idaho during the pandemic, didn't they?
They sure did. I'm glad I came about 6.5 years ago, so kind of got in a little cheaper pricing, if you will. And I would say it's one of the best kept secrets, but unfortunately, it no longer really is a secret. So
it is not a secret anymore. That's for sure. Okay, so Alexis, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're working with a lot of entrepreneurs, and people need to think differently about how they're approaching their business these days, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit about me. I've been in real estate for over a decade now, in leadership, sales, and now over the last 3 years, coaching, consulting top leaders within our industry, real estate agents and entrepreneurs as well. And yeah, I mean, right now, especially in the real estate industry, what we're kind of up against with some of the NAR settlements and things going on, changes in an industry that we don't see a ton of change in. So a lot of clientele and a lot of realtors reaching out, just saying, what on earth, right? What on earth? I've got, I work with $50 million producers who are, or plus, right, that are kind of up in odds about it and really stressed out about it. And there's a huge reframe in mindset here that's going to be needing to take place for those that are come out on top of this kind of changes.
Yeah, we've talked about this a touch on this podcast as well. It's all kind of really new. Like if you're listening to this many years later, it's you probably figured it all out. But we're recording this in 2024. And, not to date ourselves, but, everybody is trying to think about how are they going to make money going forward in a really tight real estate market where there's not much inventory and, things are moving still pretty quickly because people realize there's not a ton of inventory. I guess it depends on the market. Maybe Idaho's a little bit different, but in the Northeast, we're still seeing very little inventory with anything. So there's a lot of people out there trying to make money with the same properties. And now these NAR lawsuits that have come down and the settlements that are coming down, it's changing the entire structure for how people are being comped.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I always say that there are going to be two agents at the end of the deal that are going to earn a commission. It's going to be the same. It's just going to look a little different how we get there. And that's kind of the perspective and mindset that I coach to currently. And the fact that this is happening for our industry, not to our industry, I think is kind of a big way of looking at this, right? This is an opportunity for agents to provide their value, show their value, and quite frankly, take control of their destiny and weed out those that, like in any industry, right, maybe got into it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Rory, what are your thoughts on how to reframe kind of the conversation? I'd love to see you and Alexis kind of compare some notes on some of the conversations that you've been having recently.
Well, I mean, on the highest level, just kind of taking the 30,000 foot view on it, buyer agents now have to demonstrate and prove their value, right? So before, one of the worst things I've ever heard are buyer agents that would say, well, my work is free to you anyway. One, you are not supposed to say that under the realtor ethical guidelines, but that is clearly kind of just dismissing your value, believing that you as a buyer's agent don't have much in the way of value, and kind of reinforcing that in the marketplace. So now buyer agents really do need to demonstrate and prove their value. And perhaps when this shakes out, we'll find out that kind of the traditional percentages that buyer agents have been getting was too much. Perhaps that they have value, but not that. But the market now has an opportunity to speak and determine what buyer agents are worth, and buyer agents have an opportunity to prove it. And now they're going to have to go directly to the buyer and actually have them opt in and choose their services. So, that steps keeping away from the specifics of the NAR settlements, but that really is what it is now. I'm really interested to hear what Alexis has to say about what to do next, because while I see that from 30,000 feet, I'd like to know what the actual strategies are and what creative options buyer agents in particular have to make a career for themselves in this market.
Yeah, no, Ray, I think you really brought up some great points from a 30,000 foot view. I'm very tactical, just being a coach and consultant. I work with clients all the time on what do we need to implement, right? What is it that we need to do next? So really the most important thing for every agent right now is to fine tune their value proposition. And just as important as it is for buyer's agents, it's just as important for listing agents to all band together to protect our industry as a whole and help the seller understand the value of paying a buyer's agent commission, right? The importance in that, right, is because we know, according to statistics, that homes sell at alarmingly faster rates at a much higher valuation when a buyer's agent is going to get compensated accordingly, right? We see this with the for sale by owner markets, right? Or those that are like, hey, I'm not going to pay you anything, but here's my house. The value of their home drops dramatically. What that percentage is, forgive me, I don't know off the top of my head, but we do know that it drops dramatically. So at the end of the day, nobody can afford to work for free. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so how we get paid, again, two agents are going to get paid at the end of the transaction. It's just going to be a matter of how we get there. And I think it's just as important for listing agents to fine tune their value proposition and helping the seller understand not only theirs, but the buyer's agent value as well. So the first step for my clients and for those that I speak with in podcasts and in other forums is listing agents fine tune your listing packages. When you're at a listing appointment, fine tune it. Let them know the value that a buyer's agent gets. And I think, scripts, the power of vernacular and scripts are so important in helping the seller understand and just saying, hey, would you work for free? No, I wouldn't expect the same. So, go through your listing presentation and at the end of it, just let them know what you charge and ask them permission if it's okay with them, if they would have any qualms or issues with sharing that commission with a buyer's agent, a qualified buyer's agent who brought them a qualified buyer who will give them top dollar for their home. And that's kind of the scripting around that. Obviously, buyers' presentations, buyers know your value, right? Be able to eloquently speak it, stay away from obviously the old language that's not really appreciated out there by many agents. Just say, I work for free anyways, right? And is not necessarily legal. and really fine tune your seller and buyers questionnaires. I think, the power of powerful questions is so important, and you're not selling yourself until you really dig deep into what it is that's important to them, if you can support them, and do so really with the right value. We aren't the right fit for everybody. And I say it's okay to lose some buyers and sellers along the way. We really, truly aren't the right fit for everybody. And then obviously fine tune your scripts, and hopefully you've got a broker or a coach that's helping you fine tune some of those scripts around commission, when buyers either simply can't afford it or sellers are refusing to pay.
Let's talk about the different types of buyers, because I'm the non-real estate agent on this. I'm basically, Rory's a real estate broker. Are you a broker or an agent, with your team, Alexis?
Yeah, I've been an agent for over 10 years. Yeah.
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 So, like, let's say I'm a first-time home buyer. I might have to scrape all my pennies and nickels together to get a down payment. How do I afford to now pay the commission from out of pocket? This might be a dumb question, but what is being said to first-time home buyers?
Well, yeah, I mean, simply, especially with VA, right? With veterans, a lot of the times where they're putting 0% down and they're getting certain types, a lot of people just simply can't afford it with today's interest rates, and the prices being where they are. And the projections moving forward, a lot of buyers aren't going to be able to afford it. So the conversation, it may not even be a conversation, in the sense that they can't afford it. It might be, hey, I'm going to help you. We're going to try to negotiate, or we're going to have to put in the buyer's agreement. We're going to negotiate with the seller. There's going to be times that buyer's agents potentially won't get paid. We have to think longer term as agents, and we're in a business of relationships. And the relationships that you build are going to build a referral-based business. And it is going to be important. I mean, I don't have all the answers, nor does Rory, right? Nor do you at this point, how we're going to navigate it, because it really hasn't been released yet, right? Or implemented and enforced. But at the end of the day, that's why I think starting with the listing agents and coaching them around protecting the value of our industry and helping better understand the sellers is what's most important here. I don't know if you're part of any major real estate Facebook groups or international groups. I'm sure either both of you or one of you are. It pains me when there are listing agents on there that are posting things like, bye-bye buyer's agents, like you don't get paid anymore. And it's so unfortunate for any listing agent who's maybe even thought that, who's potentially listening right now. I don't think you want to do double the work for 2.5% or 3%, depending on where you are in the country, right? And your seller is going to expect you to bring them a buyer at the amount that they would have paid you for just representing them as the seller, because they're expecting your home to get sold. So we need to rely on these buyer-focused agents. And again, very few people can afford to work for free, if anyone, right? So I think it starts really with the listing agents, in my opinion, from my perspective.
So where does double ending a deal fall with this? Like, that's the term, right? If you're getting both the buyers and the sellers commission, like, is that now out the door?
I think as long as you can provide your value and that you have a seller who sees it, no. A lot of agents will, at least that I've worked with, a lot of agents actually won't even, they won't double end a deal. They won't provide, dual agency or what have you, because they aren't comfortable with it. And it's actually in our industry one of the most litigious situations that we see come up in courts. And so, a lot of agents won't even do it. But I think as long as the seller, the greatest distance between two people is communication. And if a seller understands that we might get to that point where I bring you the buyer and this is what I charge, or this is what, right, let's negotiate. I don't think there should be any reason why they won't. Now, if somebody refuses, that's going to be the scripting that, agents are going to need to work on to help the listing agent better understand their value and be able to eloquently speak that for a seller who might not understand our industry as well as we do.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if the market conditions were different, if it would be either an easier pill to swallow for buyers, or if there would be a different conversation that's happening right now. I mean, this all happens to be happening during record low inventory amounts in many markets. What's happening in Idaho? Like, are things sitting on the market for a while, or are things still moving quickly?
So to answer your question directly around Idaho, no. We have very low inventory, kind of like the rest of the country. So I coach agents, honestly, between Canada down to Mexico and far and wide in between. And I would say in the States, in about the 25 to 30 states I currently work in right now with clients, I would say across the board, 99% of them are seeing record low inventories, Idaho included. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, right? I don't think sellers, where are they going to go? Upgrading used to be a thing. Take your equity, 100, 200. I'm from California, $800,000 worth of equity, and go and move into that big dream house, wherever it might be. Well, it's 7.5%, 8%, because we're talking about this in May of 2024. They're pausing. They're putting it on hold. And so we're seeing low inventory just kind of across the board. So no, things in our state right now are moving pretty quick.
Yeah. Let's shift and talk a little bit about some of the work you're doing as a coach, because you mentioned the amount of coaching clients that you have across the country. And, with their worlds changing, you're probably working with people on, changing their mindsets, thinking a little bit broader, thinking down the line, not dwelling too much in the everyday to day. I was taking a look at some of your materials beforehand, and you had a philosophy of more money doesn't mean more work. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I always say efficiency over exertion, right? So more money doesn't have to mean more work. And I actually work with a lot of clients, a lot of female clients. In fact, I see this more with who are really, really struggle with the idea of, I can't work more because I'm not going to be a great parent, or I can't work more because I'm going to have to sacrifice home life, being a wife, being a parent. And quite frankly, a lot of men, same thing. And what I work with a lot of clients is ultimately avoiding the top 3 entrepreneurial mistakes that I see most. And I see this kind of across all industries, but I really, really see it with agents. Number 1 is overcomplicating success. Success is extremely simple. If you look around and you listen to some of the top individuals, whether it be in our industry or outside of it, very influential people will tell you how simple success is. And when you overcomplicate it is when things tend to get a little bit more messy. We make less money, we work more hours, and we tend to get a little bit more sloppy. Success is simple, and it's quite frankly very boring. If you ask anyone who's successful, right? They do the same things every day. Number 2, in terms of the top 3 major entrepreneurial mistakes that I see, is prioritizing the right things in the wrong order. So I have a lot of agents who prioritize, just to give you an example, like I call it the business card, right? Syndrome. I need my business, they need to be perfect. And the logo and this, it needs to be perfect. And I have clients who have missed out on hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of, commission, and income and revenue because of their focus on the right things, just either in the wrong order, or they need to make sure that their website is built before they go out there and lead generate, or what have you, or they pay for leads before they have the infrastructure to service the leads, right? These are all just parts of the things that I work with clients on. And then number 3, in terms of the top entrepreneurial mistakes that I see, is getting lost in what other people are doing or selling that are quote unquote making them a lot of money. So I'm sure you've heard of shiny penny syndrome. I help a lot of entrepreneurs get out of their own way with this, and understanding that just because you saw on Instagram and somebody had 100,000 likes on it because it worked super well for them, whether it be a book or a coaching service or a this or a that, it doesn't mean that that's what's right for you and your business right now. So I see a lot of entrepreneurs spending a lot of money on things that have absolutely no return.
How do you know all the business mistakes that I've made? I feel like I've made every one of those mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
So if you're working with an agent right now, as kind of there's a lot of flux in the space, and an agent who's either looking to reinvent themselves just because it's been a challenging market for many, or just getting into the space, what's an example of a good first step for somebody?
What's an example of a good first step for somebody who is, you'll have to forgive me, getting into the space or rebranding?
Yes,
Or
because somebody who wants to reinvent themselves in the space, or they're coming into the real estate world for the first time. What's an example of a good first step or first priority for somebody?
great question. It's funny because I'm personally in the middle of a rebrand right now, not a different industry, but it's, somewhat similar. Don't be afraid to, I always say prioritize money-making activity, period.
Mhm.
Um, I've got the one thing here behind me. I'm actually a one thing certified coach through Jay Papasan and the Keller Williams Network, and prioritizing your top 20% every single day, no matter what, and whatever industry you are in, right? I actually leverage, and leverage is a big piece that I work on with entrepreneurs and agents. I work with a lot of recovered control addicts, if you will, myself included. And leverage for me is what took my business from limited to limitless, right? And I work 35 hours a day. I always tell the story. My first $500,000 year was working 30 hours a week. And I help teach those same kind of model strategies and practices around leverage. So I would say, to answer your question directly, spend time doing your top 20% money-making activity, time block the rest, and it will get done. Trust that it will get done. It might take a little longer than you want it to get done, and then work towards your ability to earn the right to have leverage everywhere else in your life.
That is such good advice, because I've said to Rory, and to myself, like, is this revenue generating? Like, literally, like when we're having a hard time with our long list of things, where's my list for the day? My list for the day is in my pocket. That's my list for the day. It's one of my many, many lists. I have lists everywhere. Okay. But I have to look at stuff and say, okay, is this revenue generating? Or is this something I have to do right now on site where I am? And like then other things might get prioritized to, okay, this can be done from any location, so I will do this from a different location. But revenue generating is the first thing. The other thing that I've been doing a lot personally, because we're managing kind of a lot of projects all at the same time, both businesses that both Rory and I are running, and our own household, and all of our rental properties, and a business that we've launched in Provincetown. I take a look at all that stuff and say, happiness. All right, what things are going to make us the happiest to do as well? Because I think that's super important. So, like, we've actually prioritized a couple projects in our personal lives at our home that we're just kind of sitting there. And I think it's super important to kind of have an organized life and an organized space around you, because it helps my brain, have harmony with where I am and think better about everything else. So if I see, 10 buckets of projects that are all 20% done, that freaks me out completely. You know, if I could knock off any of those buckets, like, then, and cross some things off the list and feel like we were making progress toward that, I'm super happy. I always talk about making the meal. Like, Rory
Mhm.
can attest to this. Like, I'm pretty good at cooking, and cooking a bunch of different things all at the same time and having them all kind of ready around the same time.
Yeah.
It takes you have to think that way. You have to think about, time. How long is this going to take? How long is this going to take? When is this all supposed to come out? When do I have to do each of these different things? What things can I do in advance? And then boom, it all happens at the same time. Like, that is tough if your brain doesn't think that way. But, between, is it revenue generating? Will this make me happy? And how can I put all these things together? Like, that's my brain. The control freak in me, as you've mentioned, we all have a degree of control freakness. Um, it's been tough to overcome, as someone that is now building a business. What can I let go of?
Mhm.
And what can I hire out? What can I pay somebody else to do? I'm much more willing to do that now than I was even a couple of years ago, because some things we kind of feel like we know how to do it, we should do it. If we have time to do it, do it. If we don't have time to do it, hire out. Really, really that simple is just how I think now. Um, I don't know, where would I fit into your coaching program if with that kind of mindset?
Yeah, well, luckily we wouldn't have to start with abundance versus scarcity for you, because you've already kind of naturally pivoted that mindset. I work with so many people on scarcity mindsets. What you seek, you find. So if we're always worried about not having enough money, what will you find? You will not have enough money. so you've already kind of done that shift. So that's where I would start with a client typically, because that's where we usually have to start. But what I teach is kind of my own leverage formula, with clients. And so what that is it is finding out what your dollar per hour is, because at least in real estate, a lot of agents don't even know what if you ask them, what's your dollar per hour? They'll go, well, I don't know, but my average price point is 400,000, right? Or whatever it is. They don't really know. So I have a formula that helps entrepreneurs, real estate agents, and other entrepreneurs figure out what their dollar per hour is, if it's not a traditional lawyer model or they don't have a set, right? So once we figure that out, I challenge them to really create a list of everything, number one, that they never want to do. If they could wave a magic wand, essentially, and never do what they do on a day-to-day basis again, what would those things be? And we start to look at that. And what we do is we start to figure out, for instance, if you make $500 an hour, $300 an hour, $200 an hour, is it worth doing your laundry, cleaning your house, cooking for your family when you can leverage somebody at $15 to $25 an hour for that when you make X? If the answer is, yeah, no, I hate those things. And I would much rather leverage them. My next question is, does it bring you joy? So my leverage formula really is two parts, and it's number one, the dollar per hour in which you make versus what they make. And the second question is, does it bring you joy? If both of those things are checked, yep, I can afford it, and or maybe not even in your mind afford it, but based on the formula, it makes sense, and it does not bring me joy, I think everything else needs to be leveraged. So my friends, my colleague, they make fun of me all the time because they're like, what do you do? I mean, I don't do my laundry, I don't clean my house, I have a personal assistant and an executive assistant. I don't do anything that doesn't bring me joy or what my lower dollar per hour is. I just won't, because I would rather go out there and find a new client whose life I can help change.
Yeah. I think we're all conditioned and trained, by our parents and by schooling to do our chores, do our things. When you move out of the house and you're an adult, you have to do your own dishes, your own laundry, like you work for some other company. For the most part, people don't always just start out as entrepreneurs, so it just kind of gets in our head, and that becomes the systems that, we do every single day. The abundance mindset, I've noticed, is something that I've Rory and I have talked a lot about this, and we've seen it a lot in, the entrepreneur work that I've been doing the past couple of years, because I worked for major corporations for 25 years, and they don't train you to think this way because they don't want to. They want you to be working for them and commuting to that office, commuting home, finding some gym time, finding some family time, and then doing your chores. Otherwise, they don't really coach you as to how you could outsource everything. If if it's stuff that doesn't bring you joy, or you could have a better use of your time by paying somebody else to do these tasks while you focus on something else. I bet you a lot of your friends, Alexis, that don't think this way, they ask you, like, well, what do you do with your life? Like, what do you do all day long? Right? They think you sit back and you're watching Oprah. I don't even know if she's still on, but but that's not the abundance mindset. I mean, like, you're doing all these things so you then can change other people's lives and build a different business. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say there's 5 different types of leverage in business and in life. I did a lot of research studying, talking to people. Tony Robbins has a good rendition of this. There's so many out there, but I really kind of took all the thought leaders in our spaces and kind of created what I believe is like one of the most valuable 30,000 foot views of leverage. And it's time leverage, business leverage, personal leverage, financial leverage, and relationship leverage. And I speak more to that when it comes to my coaching program, but I really do think that you should have leverage in all 5 of those categories. And the formula obviously is to figure out the who, is kind of based on what we just talked about. So yeah, I think leverage is so important. And even if you are working at a 9 to 5 and you're transitioning into being an entrepreneur, or have no plans to transition into an entrepreneur and you have a 9 to 5, leverage is still so important. And I work with a lot of individuals who, whether they be lawyers or not working for themselves in some capacity, who are paid by somebody else to some degree, and they come home and they miss out time with their kids, their families, their dogs, whatever it is that they might want to do, being outside, for instance, because They don't understand this concept at a higher level.
So, you're a coach and consultant along with being in the real estate world, but would you classify yourself as a business coach? Is that kind of what a business coach does, everything you've talked about?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would say majority, given my experience, a lot of my clients are either leaders within the real estate industry, whether brokers, owners, etc., and or real estate agents. But I have a lot of other clients too: lawyers, hairdressers, massage therapists, etc. So yeah, and that's a lot of the focus.
Are there a lot of individuals who've started a business themselves, or are they working for other people? Like, the entrepreneurship journey is very lonely, as many say. You don't know who to talk to and who to network with unless you're building a network of people around you. Like, do you think that a lot of folks that you hear from, this is one of their first steps of saying, like, I've been doing this, whatever this is, my whole life myself. Like, I need more people to talk to that can do this, and I need someone to help me think differently. Like, is that one of the first like pain points that you'll hear from people?
100%, especially those who are transitioning at the beginning stages from a 9 to 5 or a salary paid employee to an entrepreneur. Your community matters, and truly tribe equals transformation, right? So I always recommend one of the focuses that I have, because yes, to answer your question, that's a big one. We need to identify the top people, the top 5 people that we associate with most. I always say, who is your supporter, like your cheerleader? Who is your coach, who can help you get out of your own way, shift your mindset, and hold you accountable? Who is that person that you're modeling after, right? Modeling is huge in entrepreneurship. We do not need or have time to reinvent the wheel. Number 3 is, who's your inspiration? Who are we striving to be in forward thinking? And then number 5, who is your mentor? And what's interesting is those are all very different, even though a lot of people, especially early on in their entrepreneur journey, don't understand. Mentors and coaches are very different. Coaches help you become the best version of yourself. Mentors help you show you the best version of themselves and teach you how to be more like them. So it's a lot of focus that I spend with a lot of people. To answer your question, I hear it all the time.
I'm gonna re-listen to this episode once this thing comes out. There's a lot going on. Before we get to the final questions, Rory, any final thoughts for Alexis?
What I do like is you talked about working in other industries, and one thing I found is that branching out and looking at what other people are doing in other industries is actually a great, really, really great way to give you inspiration in your own. So if you're a real estate agent, take a look around and see what your friends are doing who own, like you said, the salon, what the person who owns the car wash. So the other people who are doing different businesses are going to give you, great insight. As an attorney, I've always thought that attorneys are the worst at marketing, the absolute worst at marketing, because we get held up and we adhere to tradition in so many ways that really stifles creativity. But if we turn around and look at what architects are doing, they have much better marketing for their services and everything. So take a look around and see what your colleagues are doing in other industries, and draw some inspiration from there too.
Yeah, I love that.
Why don't we get to our final couple questions we ask of all of our guests, just to wrap things up and get to know you a little bit more, Alexis, and then we'll learn where people can learn more about you. So question number 1 that we have: if you can get on stage for a half an hour and talk about any subject in the world with 0 preparation, what would that be?
It's ending with why. I am a huge fan of Simon Sinek's Begin with Why, Start with Why. And I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs about ending with why. And it is really ultimately staying true through the process of entrepreneurship as to why you started in the beginning. And just a very quick synopsis of that is, ultimately, we see so many entrepreneurs get into the industry because they want to be their own boss. They want flexibility. They want to make their own hours. They want to spend more time with their family and make more money. And then they come to me and they're like, I'm making more money. I'm not as happy as I was. I'm not spending any time with my family, and I work 90 hours a week. And what happens is, through the journey of why they started, it got lost. And they start making different choices and decisions based on either the money or this or that, instead of why they started to begin with. So ending with why and filtering all business decisions based on that is probably what I would talk about.
You know, when I was a manager and a director working for corporate America, like all the people that reported into me, I always started explaining, why we're doing what we're doing, as a company, like what is the overall objective to the work that the person's been hired to do, like during my onboarding. And then I think about the short-term rental secrets mastermind group that I am in. And when I first talked to those folks, the first question they asked is, what are your goals? What do you want to get out of this? Instead of what a lot of people think is, okay, here's the playbook as to how to operate this business or how to make yours better. They start with that big picture, which is like, why are you doing this in the first place? Right. So ending with the why is an interesting way to bring it all back together and just continue to remind all of us like why we're doing what we're doing. So that's a great answer. Second question we have, tell us something that happened early in your life or your career that impacts the way you're working today.
Oh, that's a great question. I've made very little money, and I've made, some wouldn't consider it a lot. I consider it a decent amount. I've recognized, pick your hard. They're both hard, right? And so making little money early on in my career and really struggling was what taught me what I didn't want, what I was willing to accept for my life, and setting a new standard and precedent moving forward. And so I would say the challenges personally are probably what has helped get me to where I am today for sure, early on, and pushing through them, persevering, because so many give up, right? And I would be lying if I said I wasn't close almost 20 times along the way, right? So yeah.
And never forgetting those situations too. Remembering that and saying we don't want to be back there.
Yeah.
Okay, final questions we have. Tell us something you're listening to or watching or reading today. Anything in the world.
I'm sorry, tell them something.
Tell us something you're listening to or watching or reading. It could be, Bluey on TV, or it could be some business book, or it could be the new Beyonce album.
Yeah, I am re-listening / reading anything by David Hawkins. So Letting Go, the path to surrender is going to be for all of my clients, especially ones that are recovering control addicts, like I've talked about. Is so powerful. So anything he writes or has written in the past, I am actually currently re-listening to both of his books today.
All right. I'll have to check that one out. I'm not familiar with Letting Go. I don't know if I want to let go yet, but I think I'm going to have to do.
It's choice. Yep.
All right, great. We're going to link everything up in the show notes as to how people can get a hold of you. But Alexis, is there anything, any easy way that is what you recommend if people want to reach out to you as an initial chat or conversation?
Yeah, no, I mean, feel free to follow me on Instagram at the Alexis Rankin, and then email alexis@rankinenterprises.com is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And then my website is thealexisrankin.com. So any of the following above. And yeah, I just want to thank you guys so much for having me on today.
Oh, our pleasure. Is there a different Alexis Rankin that owns that domain that you're the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I sat on my name I own again, but like there were a couple years I didn't because somebody else grabbed it and was squatting on it. And I had it tied to an old email address and I didn't realize it had expired. So when I went to it, I saw some like, you want to buy this domain for $5,500. I'm like, my name is worth that much money? Like what is this? So
make money.
but speaking of owning your name, Rory, you own your name, right?
Yep. So if you wanted to find me, you can go to rorygill.com. You can also go to my law firm website, which is Urban Village Legal, urbanvillagelegal.com.
All right. And if you'd like to be a guest on this podcast, you can go to realestate.podcast.com. You'll find our forum there. You'll find all past episodes. You can listen to them there. You can go to YouTube and watch them. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Alexis, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a pleasure. We love getting into your mind and how your coaching process works. You've given us a lot of stuff to think about. So we really appreciate all of your time.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the episode, we love 5-star reviews and all your comments. We read them all. So go right ahead. On behalf of Alexis and Rory, this is Jason, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.